Want to express our appreciation for your presence this evening. We have a faithful few. It's always hard to know how many people will respond to an invitation. I'm Virgil Nelson with Placer People of Faith Together, and Placer People of Faith want to thank especially Pastor Jorge Luna and Pastor Michelle Dickerson for making this facility available for the event this evening. Also definitely want to thank all of our exhibitors and the folk who will be presenting and participating in our panel this evening for their involvement in their care. And also a big thanks to the planning committee, which included a variety of folk. Tim Brisson, who's going to be moderating this evening, Gary Mappa and Charity, who have been extremely critical and helpful in the planning. Gary's not able to be with us this evening. Many of you know that he had a heart attack and thankfully is recovering in Sutter Hospital downtown. And he's joining us on a live stream this evening. So we're glad that he could participate in that way. So without further ado, Tim, come on and take it away.
Good evening. My name is Chaplain Tim. I have a couple of roles here. I'm a law enforcement chaplain. No one called the cops on you, that's all right. I'm with an agency called the Code 9 Project, and we serve law enforcement, first responders, and veterans, and we exist to prevent PTSD and suicide. I am also the addiction and recovery pastor at 180 Church in Rockland. And I hold a Wednesday night service there. I developed a 12-step faith-based curriculum that's being used throughout our denomination and inside the Gathering Inn. And I have a couple of feet in the game here. Back in January, we put on the first of this series at my church in Rockland, and the format we came up with, we figured would work good enough, and we'll do it again tonight. We have a couple of presenters for you, a short video, and then we'll take a break and allow you to mingle with our presenters, our tables over here, and then we're going to have a panel. And the way the panel is going to work, we're going to pass out 3x5 cards to you, and you're going to write down questions for the panel, and they're going to bring them up to me, and then we will present them and get the best answer for you we can. The main thing I want to bring to sort of put a shift in how we deal with addiction and recovery versus the fentanyl crisis is the danger for a youngster is not that they're actively in addiction as with previous substance use issues. The issue tonight is poisoning. The issue tonight is one pill can kill, as you're going to hear. So it's as much about prevention and education to stop the youngster from taking that one pill or anybody from that one pill. Because one pill can kill. We'll talk about addiction and recovery. We'll talk and we'll happily field questions about that aspect of it. But what's so different from my perspective, both working with first responders who respond to overdoses and those in the addiction and recovery community, is this outbreak has a body count associated with it. It's absolutely serious, and we're going to hear on that tonight. We had a great panel for you tonight, representatives from the district attorney's office that are seeking and getting prosecutions for dealers on this. You hear from probation and their experience. Some in the recovery community, some in the health and human services community, and some in the homeless shelter community. The Gathering Inn will be on our panel tonight. In my personal experience, I've had to deliver a death notification to a family that lost somebody. He was a PhD physics candidate. Fentanyl doesn't discriminate. It doesn't. One pill can kill no matter how smart you are. what we want to do here is educate and empower you. There's plenty of resources back there for you to help get the word out, and especially with children and educating children. My children are grown and gone. I don't know what I would have done today if there were fentanyl back when I was raising my children, right? So without further ado, I want to bring up Laura Didier, who's going to talk to you about her son, Zach. And she's going to do a presentation for you. You want to come on up? Absolutely one of the bravest women I have ever met. The floor is yours.
Thank you guys for coming out. I know that we are all so busy, and I really appreciate you guys prioritizing this information because it is so important and it is happening to families in our community and around the country. And before I share how my son Zach died, I always like to touch upon how he lived, because he was an amazing kid right here in Placer County. And you can see in the slides just all the things he was involved in. He was a hurdler at the Whitney High track team. He was in scouting. He was working on his Eagle rank when he died. And he was also, he loved his dogs, and he's a straight A student. He loved school and studying and challenging himself that way. He also was musically inclined and taught himself how to play piano beautifully. And he starred in the school musical at Whitney High. This in the top, when you see him in the, looks like a Letterman jacket, that's when he was playing the lead role when his school did the play, the musical, High School Musical. And he was just a bright light, and everybody loved him, and he was kind. He was a phenomenal son and brother. He's my youngest of 3 kids, my baby, and he was only 17 and a senior at Whitney High. So this was 2020, and right after Zach had been able to do all of his performances as Troy Bolton at school, the next week was when we experienced the COVID lockdowns. And so this was, really difficult, especially for a kid like Zach. He was not a homebody. He was not one to spend a lot of time on a screen. He was out in the world living his best life. So it was a real, just a real challenge, as it was for all the kids. But he was handling it, as well as we could have hoped, and meeting with his friends, either gaming online or being outside with them, and really getting through it the best that we could have hoped for. I think we can go to the next slide. So what happened to him, and it may be a little tough to read, but he was, maybe bored from the lockdowns, maybe a little anxious around college applications. He did not struggle with substance use disorder. He wasn't a partier. He wasn't a risk taker type kid. But what happened was the Galleria Mall had just opened back up in December of 2020 for Christmas shopping. And Zach and one of his best friends, who was only 16, they were at the mall, and unfortunately they came upon on social media a young person who was marketing real medications and products like that on social media. It was Snapchat was the app that he used, that Zach and his buddies saw him on. And they, make these menus look fun and colorful and present these products as real medicines like Xanax and Percocet and Oxy and things that our kids have probably heard of, or maybe even have been prescribed in the past or know someone who has. And so in the really out of character choice for the boys, they were not, as I mentioned, they were not struggling with substance issues, and they were real, what you would call like kind of straight arrow kind of kids. But they did each decide to try what this guy was presenting as Percocet, pain medication. This was on the 24th of December, and the boys were both okay. None of us even knew they had tried anything. We had a perfectly wonderful Christmas. Zach did seem a little tired, a little bit more tired on Christmas, but he attributed it to staying up too late playing video games, which was a completely plausible answer. And so my response was more like, buddy, you knew we had Christmas plans. You should have gone to bed before 4 a.m. It was a perfectly normal type of conversation that a mom would have with her 17-year-old son on holiday break. But, and the 26th, you know, I'd given his dad a heads up. I had the kids with me for Christmas and just given him a heads up, like, can you make sure Zach gets to bed tonight at like a decent hour? Because he was really dragging today. And, you know, the next day we chatted, we're great co-parents, and he said, yeah, Zach's back to normal today. He doesn't seem tired today. And but what may have happened is he might have had a little bit of an impact from that pill that just made him sleepy. But he ended up, just him, not his buddy, but just him, decided to try another one on the 26th. And even in his text exchange with his friend, he just said, I'm going to try it one more time and then never again. And that was the deadly pill. So on the 27th, when he hadn't come down for lunch, and Chris, his dad, and his two older siblings were eating and kind of wondering if Zach was ready to eat and come down, and Chris went to check on him and found him at his desk. It looked like he'd just fallen asleep on his desk, but he was cold and unresponsive, and his color was off. And the paramedics came right away. My other son, who was 22 at the time, called 911, and my daughter, who was downstairs and 25 at the time, called me, and she had to tell me that her brother was dead. And I got to the house as quick as I could. They already had everybody outside to investigate what was going on, because unfortunately, in 2020, that was when these pills really hit Placer County. There wasn't awareness yet. The authorities were just getting handle on what they were seeing, because it takes a few months to get toxicology reports back if a drug is suspected. So they were just sort of putting it together that, oh my gosh, something's going on with fentanyl in the community, and there's these pills. But Zach didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it to warn him. You know, I'd had every conversation I knew to have around cigarettes and alcohol and marijuana and things I thought a high school senior could encounter in Placer County. But I didn't know about this. And that's why when we got the confirmation that it was fentanyl, and we were able to get into his phone right away and put together these fateful last 2 days of his life, we wanted to be part of the solution and spread awareness and share his story and put a face to this crisis so people could see how easily this can happen. Fortunately, Placer County has been incredible. I am connected with bereaved parents all around the country, and so many do not get this kind of collaboration, this kind of community collaboration, you know, to create our One Pill Can Kill Placer campaign, and to provide all these resources to the community, to get thorough investigations on cases like this. In our case with Zach, it was the first drug-related conviction. It was involuntary manslaughter in Zach's case, and selling to a minor. Fortunately, we did not have to go to trial. He pled no contest, which is virtually the same legally as guilty, so we did not have to go through a trial, and got 17 years in prison. For Zach, 17 years here. So next slide. And, you know, it's really important to know what the heck is this stuff? Like, why is it killing so indiscriminately? And, you know, some of you may have had legitimate fentanyl in the hospital. It's used every day as a anesthesia and a very, very strong painkiller. If you're dealing with any kind of, you know, it's used frequently in end-of-life care and things that are very, very serious when there's very serious pain. But in those settings, that fentanyl is manufactured in pharmaceutical labs. It's highly regulated, it's quality controlled, it's dispensed by a doctor in a pharmacy, and very often it's in a hospital where if you have any kind of a reaction to it, they can assist you immediately. But that is not what's on the street. The fentanyl that's on the street was never made in a pharmaceutical lab. It's been made in clandestine operations with no quality control. No two counterfeit pills have the same type of dose, which my son's story really illustrates. It was the same dealer that he got each pill from. Might have even been the same batch of pills, but one had very little fentanyl and one was loaded with fentanyl. When I speak with students, I go to schools now all over the state and the country, and We use an analogy of the chocolate chip cookie effect. So where, in a pharmaceutical lab, they're carefully measuring that each pill has the right dose and it's what is, stated. But in these operations that are being done, secretly, illegally, there is no quality control. And so you can think of it like making a batch of cookies. And, I don't know about you, but I don't measure that there's exactly 10 chips in each cookie. I just plop it on the sheet, and someone might get one that's loaded with chips and another one might not have many chips, or even in a cookie, one area might have a ton of chips and the other side doesn't have much chips. And fentanyl, it acts that way. It's a powder. It wants to clump together. So in your batch, in your batter, if you will, you'll have hot spots. And depending on where that pill was pressed from, it's like Russian roulette with these pills. And that's why it's so important that kids understand that. And I share that part of Zach's story because I want them to know if any of them have maybe tried something, or they know a friend who tried something and they think, well, my friend was okay. I want them to understand no two pills are the same. It does not guarantee the next one couldn't kill you and your buddy if you split it. So that's why we want kids, especially, and everybody in the community. It's not just killing kids, but the numbers and the rise of youth deaths has been astounding, really, really scary. Next slide. So you can see here just how quickly this phenomenon grew. Again, the numbers are kind of hard to see on this slide, but the bottom is ages of the individuals, and if you focus on the left side, that's our high school and college age demographic. The yellow part represents how often fentanyl was found in the toxicology of people who died from a suspected drug death. So like in Zach's case, there were no drugs in his room. They had to do an autopsy to rule out an unknown health condition, but they did tell us right away, the coroner did say, we are afraid we might find fentanyl in his toxicology, and that's when my eyes widened and I said, what is that? And how would my kid get it? And what are you even telling me right now? And when I, tried to educate myself and didn't see a lot out there on this specific element of this crisis with the counterfeit pills, I actually got connected with a nonprofit that was started called Song for Charlie. About 8 months before I lost my son, a young man named Charlie died at Santa Clara University. He was originally from Pasadena, and his parents started this nonprofit. It's totally focused on raising awareness for young people and their parents and caregivers and teachers, really informing them of what this is about and giving them language and tools for having these conversations and educating the young people in their life that they love. So you can see the graph on the far left, that's 2012. These are national statistics. So in 2012, the yellow represents how often they would find fentanyl in the toxicology reports of people that died from a suspected drug death. In the middle, that's 2017. That's when they were really seeing fentanyl coming in the adulterated heroin. So a lot of those earlier deaths were in the substance use community. Tragically, people that were struggling and did not know that their heroin was contaminated. But in 2022, you can see fentanyl's everywhere. And the highest part of that peak is our youth, and that's a couple of reasons. One, because these dealers can access our youth directly through their cell phones. They are leveraging these social media apps to connect directly, just like this guy did with my son and his buddy. The products are being marketed deceptively. I tell the kids when I present to them, I have a kind of a sample menu of what might pop up and say, do you see fentanyl on there anywhere? No, it says Xanax, it says Oxy, it says Percocet, but I want you to spell check that in your head to fentanyl. They're not telling you that it's fentanyl, but that's what it is. Our law enforcement here locally, DEA, they tell us they virtually do not confiscate anything that tests as the real pill. They're virtually all the counterfeits that test for fentanyl. And 7 out of 10 of them, the DEA has upped this estimate recently. They estimate that 7 out of 10 of the pills that they test have a potentially lethal dose. And that's why the other element that makes it so dangerous for our kids is that with fentanyl being an opioid, you can develop a tolerance. So people who have been struggling with opioids and using opioids can tolerate a higher dose. But our kids, like my son, who had no tolerance, no exposure to opioids, no tolerance for opioids, that minimum kind of 2 milligram, 3 milligram amount is lethal for our young people and middle school kids who aren't full grown. I just recently went in the fall to the funeral for a 14-year-old from Folsom High, freshman at Folsom High, who passed away. At the time we lost Zach, he was our youngest victim in Placer County, but since Zach's death, we lost a 15-year-old young girl. And it's happening, it is happening. And so that just really shows how rapidly this happened. And I did an awareness event. My middle son, the one who called 911, he's in the Air Force. He was actually about to graduate from UC Davis, and he did ROTC, and fortunately was able to stay on track and graduate and commission, and he's in pilot training right now for the Air Force. And he was just able to be home for about a week of leave, and he came and spoke with me at a school in El Dorado Hills. And I thought he put it so well. He asked all the kids, he said, raise your hand if you have like a little brother or sister. And so many hands went up, and he said, think about, like, you want to look out for your little siblings, right? You want to teach them, from your mistakes and say, look out for this or that. He said, I was only 4 grades ahead of Zach, and I didn't even know to warn him about this. This wasn't even a thing when I was at Whitney High School. That's how quickly it came into the community. Next slide. So this is what we call the new category of victim. What was, alluded to earlier, that these types of deaths are not what you would typically think of as an overdose. When I was growing up, I might get, prevention messaging around, don't get started with substances. You might develop a dependency and addiction, and because substances are addictive, there's no moralizing around that. They're addictive, to the human body, and for some people it can happen more quickly, and it can be harder to overcome. And so just sort of avoid that path, because maybe if that happens, you might end up down the road, could be years later, accidentally taking too much and passing away. But hopefully in that path, you could get into recovery, you could get the substances, out of your system and move past that. But now it's like a minefield out there, like with my son. From the first time this dealer connected with my son till my son's death was 48 hours. 48 hours? You can't see red flags in that amount of time. You can't understand what's going on, especially if you don't understand about fentanyl and counterfeit pills. And that's why poisoning really is kind of a better term for these types of deaths, just because I know when I was definitely one of those moms that would have been not my kids. My older 2 kids didn't struggle with substances either, and they were all doing great. My older 2 were at universities. Zach was about to graduate, waiting to hear if he might be one of the valedictorians. I mean, I thought I was patting myself on the back, like, we did it. We're launching these great kids into the world. But how quickly that can change in a world of fentanyl. Next slide. So one of the things we did, and I'm about to wrap up here, I appreciate your time and listening, but I did a presentation in Sacramento County about a year ago, and I do school presentations for kids and for parents, and there was a mom that came up to me, and she happened to be pretty high up in the California Department of Healthcare Services. And so I shared my Song for Charlie slides and the information that we share with families, and she contacted us to say, we really want to partner with you on something to take this messaging to scale through the state. So we partnered with them to create a free online resource portal called the New Drug Talk Connect to Protect. And so on that portal, you'll find scenario modules. So there's different modules that we've built that'll say, like, there was an overdose in my community. How do I talk to my child about it? How do I use that to open this conversation? Or my child is going on their first sleepaway field trip for school. What kind of conversation can I have with them? And so it's meant to really, it's kind of geared more for the caregiver, parent, educator audience to help them know what's going on with this crisis, because we've done a lot of research because we want to figure out where the information gaps are so we can appropriately fill those gaps and focus on those gaps. And one of the things that parents came back to us and said when we asked why, if you haven't had a conversation about this, why is that? And majority of them said, I don't feel like I know enough about this, so we've broken it down into what to know, what to say, what to do. And in May, on May 7th, which is National Fentanyl Awareness Day, we're going to be launching our Spanish language version of this, La Nueva Drug Talk. And it's not just this information translated to Spanish, it's created by Latinx content creators focusing on Spanish-speaking family stories, and it's culturally sensitive. So we're really, really proud of launching that. So after I should say, I thank you all for your kind and respectful attention. I am always very gratified to see people that want to know what's going on and be a part of the solution and spread this education, hopefully take resources, spread them through the community, because really it's all of us talking about it. And I just want it to become just common knowledge to every kid. Of course, I wouldn't ever take a pill that my doctor didn't prescribe to me. Like, I know all about the risks of that. I just want it to be like common knowledge for everybody. But I'm gonna show you a little 2-minute clip. Part of what's on that portal is a 25-minute documentary where it really kind of encapsulates the crisis. There's a couple bereaved parents that speak. If you watch the documentary, you will see a mom named Gina, and her daughter Jules that she speaks about died here in Placer County. She's the 15-year-old that I mentioned. That was our youngest victim at the time when she died. And subject matter experts. So it's a great 25-minute documentary, well worth watching, and this is just a little 2-minute trailer about it. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions down later in the evening. So we'll play the video, and then the next speaker will come. Thank you.
A local teenager dead from the suspected fentanyl. 17-year-old daughter is the latest local high school student to die of an accidental fentanyl.
Dead after taking pills laced with fentanyl.
Each week, the equivalent to a classroom of high school students dies of overdose across the country.
Today, fentanyl is being used by drug traffickers to produce counterfeit prescription pills.
These are completely fake pills.
60% of counterfeit pills that are out there right now contain potentially lethal doses of fentanyl.
A lot of young adults in America are getting these pills on social media.
Even if it comes from their best friend, it's most likely not safe because the drug supply right now is not safe.
None of us asked to have people we love passing away due to a preventable cause, but that is the thing about it is entirely preventable.
We didn't start this problem, but we can be part of the solution.
Thank you, Laura. Can we give it up for Laura one more time? She's brave. And now for the show and tell part of the evening. I hold in my hand a couple of boxes of Narcan, an emergency treatment for an opioid overdose. So what if you come across someone who appears to be in the midst of an overdose? We're gonna watch a short video on how to administer this, and you're all gonna walk away from the back with one of these, right? Let's normalize having this in the house, please, or at the place of work or at the school. So we'll watch a very short video on how to administer Narcan.
Before we talk about what to do during an opioid overdose, let's look at the list of opioids. It includes the street drugs heroin and fentanyl, as well as prescription pain medication. Anyone taking prescription or street opioids is at risk for an overdose. Those who are at greatest risk inject opioids, take higher doses, mix opioids with other medications that may cause sedation, or have a pre-existing medical condition. An opioid overdose can lead to death if not treated. Here are some signs of a possible overdose. It's hard to wake the person up, or they seem overly sleepy or confused. Their breathing has slowed or stopped. Their pupils are the size of pinpoints. Their lips or fingernails are blue. If you see any of these signs and you suspect an overdose, call 911 immediately. Then administer the naloxone, also called Narcan nasal spray. Remember, naloxone only works on opioids. It will not treat an overdose from sedating medications such as benzodiazepines, which include Valium, Klonopin, Ativan, and Xanax. Start by moving the person to their back, then follow the 3 Ps: peel, place, and press. Take the spray out of the box and peel back the corner tab to open. Hold the spray with your thumb on the bottom of the plunger and your first and middle fingers on either side of the nozzle. Tilt the person's head back and support their neck with your hand. Gently place the tip of the nozzle into either nostril until your fingers are against the bottom of their nose. Press the plunger firmly and all the way to give the entire dose. There is only one dose, so do not test it first. Then roll the person to their left side. If they do not wake up in 2 or 3 minutes, administer a second dose of naloxone. Stay near them until emergency medical help arrives. Contact your local pharmacy to find the most convenient location to purchase naloxone. More detailed instructions on how to use naloxone can be found inside the package. Preventing deaths caused by opioid overdose starts with all of us. We share the responsibility of safe care for everyone in our community.
So Laura was mentioning, she didn't see signs. This wasn't a long-term issue, but there are many who are addicted or become addicted to fentanyl, that become addicted to opioids through other channels. Prescription medications from the closet to heroin, which is harder to get, and they do end up on fentanyl. How does someone end up there? What are the risk signs? What can we as parents do for our children? I can tell you, I see in the generation coming up, I see a generation that's overplugged and underconnected. They're overplugged on their phone, but we're losing connection. I see Monster energy drinks. They're drinking these things 24/7. I don't know what 300 milligrams of caffeine would do to me in one can, but they seem to knock them down one after the other. All these are affecting how our youth sleep and their mental health. So our next presenter is going to address that. This is Christina Ibanez from the Placer County Health and Human Services, and she has a presentation on lack of sleep and what this is doing to our youth. I'll bring her to the stage now.
Thank you, Tim. I should have sat closer. Really appreciate you all being here tonight, and I just want to again thank Laura for her courage, and it's just so admirable that you're willing to be so vulnerable and just keep at it. And I also want to really give huge kudos to the DA's office, who has worked with Laura and many parents in our county, going to all the schools in our county, and having assemblies, school-wide assemblies for all of our students. So if you go, well, do our students know this? Yes, they do now. Thanks to Laura and the DA's office, Lisa, in the back, and she has a table over here as well. So thank you so much. My name is Christina Ibanez, like Tim said, and I'm with Placer County Public Health. I work on youth substance use prevention, and I also work on different aspects of mental health and wellness and the things that might put our young people more at risk to want to grab that pill or use marijuana or alcohol or anything that might put them at risk. So number one, what is restorative sleep? I'm going to talk about that, and then what we can do, what factors actually connect to mental health and wellness, and then how we can actually increase our restorative sleep. And this goes for all of us because we all need better sleep, I think. Don't you think so? Yes, I'm included in that. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So basically, I know the text is small, but we have handouts for all of you later on. Many things happen when you're sleeping. There's all of these wonderful things that go on that actually are processes that are happening even though we think we're resting. We are resting, but our brain is working hard. Our hormones are being reset for growth. We're restoring our muscles and cells and bones. We're also we're grouping everything that we just experienced for the day into little kind of like files in our brain so we can access them later on. We're also cleaning out the pathways of our brain. Our brain is cleaning up like a garbage service. I have to remember to take my garbage out tonight, by the way. And just imagine if we don't get that sleep, how hard that would be to find the information the next day. And I think that's why restorative sleep is really, really important no matter what age we are, but also as we get into our elderly years, which I'm in that section now, that it's even more important. And also our immune system, really important for our immune system to stay strong. Even a couple days of not getting enough sleep can make us vulnerable to the normal germs in our environment. And again, for our teens, the most important thing, I think, is the hormonal resets that really balance and reset the mood with all of the chemical processes that go on, especially during puberty. There's so much going on. And if you're not getting that reset time, it is going to slowly deteriorate your mental health. And you can look up there and see how many hours people need to get sleep. For adults, it's about 7 to 9 hours. And when we talk about restorative sleep, we're talking about uninterrupted sleep, without notifications, without conversation or music in the background or different things going on, but really solid sleep. And of course, there's all these different ways that you can do that to recharge your sleep habits so that you can sleep easier. And those are on the publication too. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, next slide. And so lack of restorative sleep, that actually happens a lot for a lot of us. And so if you're not getting that actual solid, uninterrupted sleep, there are things that can happen. For young people, it could really make them grumpy. They just might check out of school. They might not want to go to school. A lot of parents are having a hard time with young people getting to school on time these days, or even going to school at all. School avoidance is a real big problem in our schools across the country right now. And so, again, and for young people, our really little ones, if they're not getting enough solid sleep, which a lot of them aren't still getting enough solid sleep, they can actually show symptoms that are similar to ADHD just because they're not getting sleep. So they're younger, their bodies are a little different, and so those symptoms present differently. I worked with this pediatrician from Sutter last year on a presentation that we did at a conference, and I learned a lot from him about this. And he said that if a parent is coming in with a child with symptoms that of ADHD, he asks about their sleep habits. And oftentimes he'll have luck just putting them on a really solid sleep schedule, and then those symptoms will disappear. And for our adolescents, it could be more impulsivity, anger, just a lot of different things. And then again, we have, because of all the challenges that young people go through, if we're compounding that with lack of sleep, and they're not getting those hormonal resets, and they're feeling vulnerable by all the normal stress that's going on in their lives, they might be more likely to take up risky behaviors. And so this is research here that shows that students who actually didn't get enough sleep, that got less than 8 hours of sleep a night, actually the blue bars show that their likelihood of smoking, drinking marijuana, all of those risk factors actually were higher. Really affects their mental health. Next slide, please. So really, there's a lot of people that are looking at sleep in adolescence today, and the reason I really like to focus on sleep is even though it's complicated to try to make sure our lifestyles are more supportive of sleep, it's actually the low-hanging fruit that we can get a big payoff on. Because people my age, we didn't have a problem going to sleep. We didn't have all of the interference. We didn't have a lot of other things that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And as a result, our young people are showing their mental health is really being impacted. And UCLA Center for Developing Adolescent agrees with this. They're doing a lot of research on this now. Okay, next slide. So what's interfering? Academic pressures. A lot of pressure to have AP classes, multiple AP classes, a lot of extracurriculars, late sport practices, even elementary kids that are practicing sports into 8:30 or 9 at night. Phone notifications, of course, and one of the big ones is caffeine, just like Tim said. And so one of my research was actually really revealing for me when I found out that caffeine has a 6-hour half-life. So what that means is if you drink 150 milligrams of caffeine at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that by 9 o'clock at night, 6 hours later, you still have half of that in your body. So you have 75. And then at 3 in the morning, you still have half of that 75. And the other part of the research that was really concerning to me was that if you have caffeine in your system, you do not get restorative sleep functions occurring. So if you think about it, a lot of young people now, there's this, not everybody, but there is a trend for young people and even some adults to take the 300 milligram Power Up sports drink workouts before their workout. Well, restorative sleep doesn't occur if they still have caffeine in their body after those workouts, and so they're not getting the repairing of the muscles and the bones and the tissues and the cells so they're actually counteracting their whole workouts by doing that. But then again, they're also not getting the really important mental wellness reset for themselves. So caffeine is a huge issue for our young people, especially the coffee drinks too. So it's important, I'm not going to stop my coffee altogether, but I just drink it in the morning now, and I make sure it's done by around 10. And so then I can get some sleep, and I've had great results with that. Nicotine also can be very disruptive for sleep, especially because people will have their sleep disrupted, but then they'll get up earlier to make sure that they are able to get that back into their system. And the other big part of this is marijuana. So a lot of people will say that they smoke marijuana to help them sleep. Well, initially it will help sleep, but then it doesn't. And not only is marijuana detrimental to youth mental health and wellness, and the research is very clear on this because of the developing teen brain, when all these functions are so important for adolescents until they're about 25. When you interfere with any substance, you're going to put a young person at risk. But also, you don't get that restorative sleep if you have marijuana in your system. And marijuana, cannabis, they're the same thing. It's fat soluble, so it lasts a lot longer in your body. And so if somebody is using cannabis to go to sleep, not only are they putting themselves at risk for dependency, they're also not getting all of those restorative functions, which is becoming this snowball effect on their mental health and wellness. So that's something that's really important to consider. And then if you do think about all these young people that have all the pressures and the stresses of life, and every family is different. Some people have more issues and challenges than others, but young people that have so much pressure, aren't they going to be, and they're not maybe getting enough sleep either, aren't they going to be the ones that are more likely to try to find relief through a pill or smoking or vaping or alcohol? So what do we want to do? What are we going to do about this? Let's go to the next slide. And again, this is the risk for cannabis, and I'm actually going to add this and then I'll go to the good news. Cannabis is also a risk for fentanyl use because THC actually disrupts the dopamine system just like opioids do. They both are working in that system. So, and because THC is so much higher today than it was when I was a teenager, it was about 3% THC, which is the psychoactive component of marijuana. Today, some of the products that are made that are far from natural, that their concentrates can be close to 100%, 95, 98%. And in Europe, any cannabis that has over 15% THC is considered a hard drug, the same as heroin, because it's so psychoactive and it is so detrimental to your mental health. So think about young people. And we know that young people, anybody with a substance use disorder as an adult today, probably started 9 out of 10 adults with a substance use disorder today started using before they were 18. And it's that brain, it's that vulnerable brain that's right now is developing for efficiency in adulthood, not addiction. And so it's really important to make sure that if our young people have needs, that we connect them to resources. And that's why cannabis is actually a really high risk for future opioid use and also fentanyl, especially for our young people. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So the good news is we can do some really basic, simple things to, it's not going to solve all the world's problems, but there are foundational activities and life structure that we can bring to our young people to give them their best foot forward that will help them sleep. And healthy, positive social connections are really, really important. We want to make sure that young people always have a trusting adult to be able to talk to. Their parents are, we want to make sure as parents that our young people talk to us. Sometimes they're not going to do that with us, but let's connect them to somebody else. There's school wellness centers now, a pastor, a youth pastor, a coach. Finding your young person, making sure that your young person has a trusting adult somewhere that they can connect with and talk to. Really, really important. On top of other positive social peer connections. Reaching out for support, not really noticing those early signs and connecting them to see maybe they're open to counseling. Well, school wellness centers are a really great connecting point, a bridge to mental health supports that are really safe, and it makes it easy for you to go in and talk to people from your school if you're lucky enough to have those. And then also, these are the different changes that you can make in your life to look at what might help. The food that we put in our bodies also will disrupt our sleep if we're eating too many heavy sugar foods, heavy fried foods. Eating late at night before we go to sleep really disrupts our sleep and also impacts our mental health. And that's science, that's actually research. So, and then the sun, really important to get outdoors. Outdoor activities cannot be underestimated, but every day we all need to get outside. Outdoor light, natural light and sunshine is so important to regulate the mental health and also the sleep hormones. Exercise and breathing techniques, really important to get that stress out every day, making sure you're getting that out of your body. We know that we have stressful lives, but if we don't allow that mountain of stress to build and we can get rid of it through breathing, mindfulness, or breathing exercises, or doing a lot of heavy aerobics and getting out in nature, we can make sure that mountain isn't building every day to the breaking point to where we really need some relief. And then the food and drink again. Science actually, it's not just mom or me as a grandma, says that fresh fruits and vegetables actually reduce the risk for depression. We don't know what all those pieces are in the fresh fruits and vegetables, but they work, and we know that from science now. So really making sure we're getting plenty of fresh whole foods. These are really important for our physical health, but now science has really taught us that these are just as critical for our mental health. Okay, next slide. Is that me? Is that the end? I'm not sure. I'll go on forever, you guys know, anybody who knows me. Okay, good. I do have those posters back there, and you can always make little adjustments with your family. Really connecting your young people to supports as soon as they need it, and keeping those connections open, I think, is the most important thing. Thank you.
Am I the only one that checked my watch for the halftime on my last coffee? I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Let me put an exclamation point on the sleep, lack of sleep. I work with this, do some ride-alongs with an officer, and he told me a story. He went to this church where once every couple years, a few of the members, this is a church in Sacramento, would make themselves homeless. They would go out on the street and just sleep on the street like a homeless person. And he said the thing that freaked him out the most was the lack of sleep on about day 3. Because how do you sleep out there? It's not comfortable, it's noisy, it's dangerous, and the cops were coming and moving him around, which is ironic in a way, right? Since he's an officer. So he says about a week into this thing, someone reached out from the church and says, hey, can we bring you a care package? Can we bring you anything? And he goes, I just need a nap. And this was a super healthy guy, like black belt in jiu-jitsu. That changed his opinion on dealing with people that may be in a position where there's severe lack of sleep, for disorganized thinking, for the inability to follow instructions or make a list. It impacts everything. Lack of sleep is I can see how getting someone on a sleep pattern could turn around some symptoms for sure. And before we go, we're going to take a short break and then we'll assemble a panel for you. Let me address one aspect of what do you do if someone in your home you suspect, a loved one of yours, is perhaps in the throes of addiction. Let me play out a scenario for you. I worked with Sacramento County Sheriff's Department for several years, and I was embedded on the North Station in Garfield, the north area of Sacramento, and I only did ride-alongs on Graveyard. Lack of sleep sometimes, but because that's where the interesting police work was, and there's no traffic. But let me give you a scenario that I encountered a lot. We get a call to someone who's in an overdose, someone's passed out, so my deputy is there, and there's someone from Sacramento, a paramedic, and there's probably someone young that's passed out on the floor or something, and the reporting party was probably mom, right? So the deputy is paying attention, along with the paramedics, to the addiction victim or whatever's going on there, and no one's talking to the mom. So I began, in these situations, I'd ask my deputy, can I talk to mom? And I would address the mom. And I remember in one of these situations, someone had told her, well, you really got to kick him out, because otherwise you're just enabling him. And I don't like that word. Because for me, when I shared with her, when I spoke into her and when I want to speak into you, is making sure you keep your loved one alive and give them basic dignity is not enabling them. Clearly this mom wasn't partying with her son, right? If you have someone in your family that's in that situation, whatever the substance is, talk with one of our people here, talk with myself, have a plan, and then it's okay. This boundary is for you to keep this person alive, to feed them, so when they're ready, you will have a plan and you can bring them into recovery. That is not enabling them. Because what I don't think some of these young first responders that I've worked with get is, you can't unmom a mom, can you? You can't just kick your kid to the curb. You can't not feed them. You can't get a restraining order against your own child just because they haven't gone into recovery yet. So if there's someone in your family, if there's someone that you are asking, how do I help them? What's the best plan? That's a boundary you're gonna have to make on your own, but work with these resources here, have a plan, and when they finally say, okay, all right, here's the number I'm gonna call. Here's a meeting we can go to. Here's an app on my phone I can take you to. You're ready to go to the emergency room, whatever it is. Ensuring basic dignity and keeping your loved one alive, I don't think is enabling. Amen? All right, let's take a short 5-minute break. I'm gonna assemble the panel, and then we'll come back. I'm gonna pass out these cards. Write down your best questions for them, and they'll bring them up to me, and then we will have the panel answer them. All right, we'll see you in about 5 minutes. If you don't have a pen, you got a couple. All right, now my favorite part of the evening. Absolutely. And Virgil right there in the very cheerful shirt, bright shirt, celebrating the onset of spring, will gather up your questions for you. So starting with my immediate left here, I'll turn it over to you and introduce yourself and give your impressions on what you've heard and what brings you here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Sawyer. I am a deputy probation officer with Placer County. I've been a probation officer for 16 years now. It wasn't until this last year with my last assignment that I had one of the toughest days of my career. I was supervising juveniles, and two of my coworkers called me. They needed me to come over to the school to help them test a young female who was on probation. And when I got there, I tested her, and her test came positive for fentanyl. And I looked at her and I said, "You've been using fentanyl." And she looked at me with the most puzzled, shocked, horrified look on her face. She goes, "I don't touch fentanyl. I would never use fentanyl." And the sincerity that I saw on her face, I believed her in that moment. And so after that, I talked to my coworkers and I left. And when I left, something just didn't feel right. You know, I'm a firm believer that we have our brain for intelligence and then we have our heart, which is also smart. And so that day, my heart was smart and I went back. And when I went back to the school, I saw my coworker there holding the girl up. She was going limp. And the girl that was horrified when I was talking to her was no longer able to speak. She was not making any sense. She was kind of making weird noises. She would get this euphoric grimace on her face, and then she would fade out. And then all of a sudden, her entire body weight dropped, and her lips began to turn blue. And at that point, I knew right then that she was having symptoms of a fentanyl overdose. So at that point, me and my partner began to administer Narcan. So the little box of Narcan that you guys see here, it saved her life that day. It took two to get those, to bring her back. And she is now living her best life and thriving and not testing positive for anything. So I just wanted to share that with you guys today. And that's why I'm here to speak about fentanyl awareness and answer questions. Thank you.
I work with Placer County Probation, the homeless liaison team. Law enforcement chaplains were I'm a volunteer part of their peer support system, their mental wellness system. And I can absolutely tell you this, the fentanyl explosion is taking a huge toll on first responders. Her experience, I've heard from others. Hers was successful, some reversals are not. But all of the first responders that go in, teenage and child calls are the hardest for first responders. And when it seems like it's preventable, it's even hard between overdoses or suicides. The fire responders, the hospital care workers, the circle of impact on this is wide. And for some first responders, they are repeatedly administering fentanyl, even in probation in the field. And the effects of a person when they come to are somewhat unpredictable, but they last and can cause post-trauma injuries in our first responders. So it's more than just the families, it's all of the systems that are around the support care, and the first responders are also suffering from this outbreak. Next.
Thank you, good evening. My name is Lisa Botwinick. I'm one of the supervising deputy district attorneys at the Placer County District Attorney's Office. I oversee our community outreach unit. Most importantly, in this last 2 years, I've overseen the One Pill Can Kill Placer campaign here in Placer County, which I've been most proud of specifically has been our outreach at the schools. We've spoken to nearly 35,000 students in the last 2 years, educating them on the dangers of these fake counterfeit pills that we've seen in our community. We've been to every high school in Placer County and almost every middle school. We've spoken to a wide variety of students, both in the suburban areas of the county as well as the rural areas of the counties. I personally go myself. I take bereaved families so that we can share their stories. So the students hear firsthand the facts about fentanyl, but they also hear the stories from the families who have lost their kids. So the students hear firsthand the dangers of fentanyl so that they can hear the truth and the facts, not what they're hearing from their friends about fentanyl. So it's been really impactful for me to have this sort of impact in our community to make sure that we're educating our students. We also do parent information nights and also community events like this to make sure adults know the facts about fentanyl. Because a lot about what similar to what Song for Charlie is doing about educating adults is this wasn't a danger that we faced when we were kids or high school students. So we know how to talk to our kids about methamphetamine and cocaine and alcohol and nicotine, because they're the similar dangers that we faced when we were kids. But we didn't deal or face fentanyl when we were high school students. So a lot of parents and adults struggle with how to talk to their kids about fentanyl because they don't understand the dangers and the risks that they face. So it's important for us to make sure that we're educating adults in our community so they know how to talk to kids as well. So that's been my main role within the county and the One Pill Can Kill Placer campaign these last couple of years.
Thank you. I can't say enough about the support of this county just from top to bottom. We have a DA's office that is prosecuting. For a few minutes, one of the Placer County Sheriff's detectives came in. They have a task force specific now to investigating suspected overdoses. You've heard what probation is doing. You heard what the gathering is doing. We have so many resources. We are so lucky to be in this county, aren't we? All right, next.
Hi, so my name is Caroline. My job title is as a state opioid response patient navigator, specifically working at AEGIS, which is Placer County's methadone and Suboxone clinic, where we specifically treat people with opioid use disorder. So part of my job is working with patients within our program, and then also through grant funding through the state opioid response grant. The other part of my job is outreach in the community, specifically handing out Narcan. So at AEGIS across the state of California, we're trying to work with these funds to make harm reduction materials more available and accessible to people as a low barrier option. One of the initiatives we're working on right now is vending machines, harm reduction vending machines on college campuses and in more rural areas so that people can access these life-saving materials easier without having, to go into a pharmacy or ask for them at a doctor. Right now, we're kind of focusing on reaching out to college students. Like last month, we were at Sierra College. We handed out 450 Narcan kits to students right before spring break. We'll go back again right before summer break again, distribute Narcan. We did Yuba College last week. So we're really trying to get as much Narcan out into the hands of people as we possibly can. We see a lot of fentanyl at the clinic I work with. I would say right now we're treating about 750 people for opioid use disorder. When I looked at our numbers, real-time numbers this morning, over 250 of them are reporting that fentanyl is their drug of choice when entering our program, which is a huge jump from the drugs that we used to see in the past. And I'm talking just several years ago. It was mostly pain pill prescriptions, heroin, but now almost everybody coming into our clinic is coming in with fentanyl in their system and saying that they're struggling with its use. So that's my job, and I'm here tonight to just answer any questions.
I call Caroline, she's like the Oprah of Narcan. It's like, one for you, Narcan for you, Narcan for everybody. I've literally walked in the field with her, and she's just handing out Narcan to random people, and they don't know what to do about it. It's pretty cool. All right, and Nicole is last.
I'm Nicole. I'm with the Gathering Inn. I'm the site manager at the Low Barrier Shelter in Auburn. I don't have as much impact on preventing these individuals too, but I deal with experiencing it on a daily basis. And I do that.
And I carry a recovery meeting into the, MTS is the tent city that's just right over here behind Home Depot. That's the site that she manages. And I help carry a recovery meeting in there. And Nicole just does amazing work down there, amazing work. Caroline, I think the first question's for you. I got a question. if you administer some Narcan to somebody that's not under the effect of opioids, can it harm them?
So that's one of the nice things about Narcan is it does not have side effects if you use it on somebody who's not experiencing an overdose. So if you see somebody down and say they're drunk, passed out, you can still administer Narcan and there's not going to be a harmful effect to them.
So when in doubt.
When in doubt. If you suspect it could possibly be an overdose, it's always better to administer the Narcan than to not.
And one of the effects of any opioid is to shut down the central breathing system. So if the person isn't breathing, CPR definitely. It's not either or.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also important to remember to always call 911, regardless if you administer Narcan, they're still going to need some medical attention.
Does peer pressure from their peers cause more addiction?
I think it definitely causes more experimentation.
Yeah.
But I think that's been true our whole lives, for any generation. I mean, I think that was true when I was in high school. I don't know if anyone in this room would say it didn't play a role when they were in high school, right? Whether it was alcohol at a party or a cigarette. And I think now we're seeing it with pills. But fentanyl is so highly addictive that one-time use could make someone an addict. So that one-time experimentation could make you an addict, whereas one-time use of another drug, like a couple of years ago, could have just been an experimentation and may not have led to an addiction.
Can I kind of expand on that? I know that the people coming into our program, the demographics really skewing lower. We have a lot of people that are 18 years old coming in seeking treatment, and the fentanyl gets them really, really fast. I mean, they're coming in with a huge level of dependence on this, and they're coming in reporting that their use is astronomical amounts. One pill, as we kind of talked about, can be deadly for someone without a tolerance, but the actual fentanyl, people that are struggling with their fentanyl use as addicts are reporting huge amounts of fentanyl that they're using. But that's really dangerous because that's also a huge amount of fentanyl on the streets. What if one of those people drops that bag and it ends up in a park? I mean, it's deadly. It's deadly for people that don't have a tolerance to it, and it's deadly for people even who are using it for a long time. They might use a little too much one day or have a stronger batch. Again, the chocolate chip cookie effect. They never know what's in their bags. And another thing we're noticing is that people who are reporting that their drug of choice is other drugs, they're saying I'm using meth, they're still testing positive in their UAs for fentanyl, regardless of the drug that they're taking.
I can kind of elaborate a little bit as well, having worked with the juvenile population, or most at-risk population. They're very much influenced by social media. And if you see teenagers nowadays, they're constantly on their phones. They're looking at videos and pictures and posts that are glorifying drug use, glorifying Xanax. Xanax is one of our most prevalent fake pills that are actually made with fentanyl. Even their rappers and music is made about glorifying Xanny bars. That's what they call them, Xanny bars. And when they're seeing that, they see that they want to repeat that and live that lifestyle as well. And so honestly, social media is a real disadvantage to this generation of youth.
The recovery wisdom I would pass along is that friends are like elevator buttons. Some take you up and some take you down. One of the hardest things for someone coming out of custody is as soon as they get out there, their connect is going to blow up their cell phone. Their friends are going to blow up their cell phone. I became a chaplain through my recovery story. Praise God, I haven't had to take a drink in 10 years, but as soon as I quit, my friends went away. And one of the things that we have to do in recovery is sometimes isolate people from their so-called friends. Peer pressure is huge, the pressure to fit in, to go along with the crowd, to be seen as cool. Absolutely, peer pressure is huge. A big part of recovery is building a new network of friends, preferably through meetings with like-minded people who are serious about their sobriety. Nicole, is that what you find too? Yeah.
Absolutely. Working in a low barrier setting, one of our goals is to transfer individuals into a congregate high barrier setting. So they're surrounded by individuals like-minded and striving for the same thing. It's more difficult with the influences in the low barrier setting to get into the field. What do you mean by low barrier versus under the influence? It's come as you are. You can be under the influence but still have shelter. So they may be using, and some of the instances I've experienced in the few months I've been there is with an overdose, and somebody felt they were taking another substance. And I tested it after the individual overdose. They thought they were taking meth, and it was fentanyl. So, and fortunately, we had Narcan and was able to prevent the whole overdose and be able to get that into the field. And the hygiene is clean. Yeah, you're clean and sober.
You have to test every day to get back in. This is probably for me. Is it common for individuals suffering from PTSD to self-medicate with controlled substances? Absolutely. In working with individuals suffering from PTSD, whether they're first responders, veterans, combat veterans, complex PTSD from childhood, what they will report to me is they are stuck. They lose the ability to connect in groups, and they know it, so they can be at their kid's party and they don't know why they're not present and enjoying it. And that they will live in fear of being triggered if they suffered a traumatic incident, and very often self-medicating is the way that they're gonna keep that at bay. PTSD is, and substance abuse can often go hand in hand, as it is with depression. The other question here is depression a frequent precursor to substance abuse? Absolutely, absolutely. They will sensory seek, dopamine seek to get out of that, to raise their spirits, and then back down they go. It can actually be a terrible cycle. Alcohol in the end is a depressant, and for the few minutes it makes you feel good, you will be depressed after that. To put an exclamation point on the THC, being a child of the 60s and 70s, this is not your grandma's weed. The issue with the oils and such that are 99% is the THC overload can lead to psychotic breaks and other mental illnesses, and they can be THC induced. The wake and bake, but now it's with oil, now it's with vaping. If you have a child or someone, you know someone that's just vaping THC all the time, that is a very different animal than what we had in the 70s.
If I can real quick, Tim,
Go.
one of the
Yeah.
things we talk about when we talk to the kids at the school assemblies is we're concerned about self-medication. We're concerned that kids think it's easier to find one of these prescription pills through social media to deal with depression, anxiety, stress, staying up late to study for exams, pain management because they've got a big game the next day. And it's easier to get one of these prescription pills on social media than it is to talk to their doctor or talk to their parents. And knowing what the odds are, they're gonna end up with a fake pill because that's what's out there, are these fake pills. And knowing that these fake pills, 7 out of 10 contain a lethal dose of fentanyl in them, we wanna make sure that we're educating kids so that they know that if they are struggling, that they're going to the right place for help, which is the grown-ups, that they're going to their parents, a trusted adult, their doctor, to get a legitimate prescription if they need one, or counseling if that's what they need. Because we don't need them turning to social media and getting these fake prescription pills and self-medicating. Because if they really do need Xanax for their anxiety, they need to get real Xanax, not these fake ones off of social media. Or kids who are looking for Adderall because they're trying to stay up late to study for those AP exams because they're under so much pressure. We don't need them going to social media and buying these fake Adderall pills when they think they're real. So, you know, like we talked about earlier, this is affecting kids from all different areas of life, all different paths. It's not just one type of kid, it's all kids who are being affected, who are looking for these prescription pills that they think are legitimate and are being affected.
I'm not even about all the social media stuff. I've been following this. How, can you walk us through how it works first? Like, where does the kid go from watching social media to acquiring the substance?
Unfortunately, it's so easy on their apps. There's all those social media apps, from Snapchat to Facebook to Instagram to TikTok to Discord to, I mean, you name it, almost every social media app they can buy drugs on. And a lot of them, it's not even the kids are looking for it themselves. Drug dealers can reach out to kids. So if your kids or don't have their privacy settings locked down to where their accounts are all private, drug dealers can reach out to them and solicit them and send them menus and send them messages. So think of it as simple as texting, because most of these apps have like an internal texting feature. So think of it as simple as me texting Christina, "Hey Christina, what are you doing today?" I can text her, "Hey, want to buy a Xanny bar?" Or I can text her a picture of my menu of all the different things I'm selling. And then it's as simple as a text exchange, but it's going through the social media apps. And then it's a, "Hey, do you want to meet up at the mall? Hey, I'm outside of whatever store." And then, there's all these money apps, Venmos and PayPals, and there's a million others. And now they're sending money through these apps. So you don't even have to actually give a $20, $40 anymore. It can all be done electronically. Money exchange too. Now it's just as simple as the only actual exchange is the actual pills. We never have to say a word to each other in person. We never have to exchange cash. The only actual exchange may actually be the pill. But it can also be as simple as, "I'll leave it by your mailbox." I may never meet Christina. I may never see the person I ever bought something from. So it's so easy to do, which makes it even scarier, because the kids are carrying their drug dealers in their pocket, which is what makes teenagers and our youth so much more susceptible. Like if I wanted to buy drugs in high school, I knew how to do it, but I had to go meet the kid behind the bleachers or in the park or maybe behind the alley at the grocery store. Like that was scary. I wasn't gonna go do that, right? Like they might rob me, like they were sketchy. I might have to steal money from my parents to do it. Like there's all sorts of other issues involved. But now it's all on a phone in my pocket, and I never even have to meet the dealer because they're gonna leave it on my doorstep or on the mailbox around the corner. So it's really quite scary. But the DEA, if you go to their website, they have a lot of really good information. They can even have a page of all the emojis that kids are using that decipher, these emojis mean this drug, and these emojis mean this is how much I want to buy it for. So it kind of like translates the drug lingo, because I can't even keep up with it. It changes too often. But yeah, you have to just keep open communication with the kiddos in your life to make sure they know that you know, and they know the dangers, because you can't lock down their phones. There's too many different apps, and their phones are too useful for us as adults to track our kids. And you can use parental controls, but your kids can then Google how to get around the parental controls. So it's really, I found, especially with my own kiddos, it's really about open communication with your kids and just trying to keep that, hey, look, this stuff is dangerous, and I'm just looking out for you, and I want you to be safe, right? As opposed to control, lockdowns. That's just gonna make them wanna do it even more. So it's all about open communication. Hey, yeah, and like I don't let my kids have Snapchat. They have Instagram, they have Facebook, but I won't let them have Snapchat. That one's evil. Lord. After Zach's case, I was like, we're never having Snapchat in our house. But it's really just about communication and teaching safe use of apps. Like my kids' accounts are locked down, they're private. They're only allowed to be friends with people they know in real life. You just try to take as many safeguards as possible to protect yourself and to protect them. But, if they're at the mall, someone can reach out to them. But that doesn't stop a drug dealer from personally walking up to them at the mall either and being like, hey kid, which is what happened to me at the mall when I was a kid. I mean, that stuff still happens too,
So they're not just around talking to the kids, but parents are also giving in to letting their kids have access to those apps, right?
It's true, the apps do require, most apps, it's like a 13-year-old
For
requirement.
the people online, she's asking about the age limitations on apps and whether
Oh,
parents.
it's online too, sorry.
Yeah, and
Yes.
whether parents are giving in on that aspect a little bit.
Yes, most social media apps require you to be 13 or older in order to have an account. So either kids are lying about their age, or parents are allowing kids to lie about their age, which kind of defeats the purpose, right? So I've heard other states are actually trying to raise the age, but that defeats the purpose if people are still going to lie about their age. But you're right. You're the mean mom? I did. I made my kids wait till they were 13. I said, hey, the law says, but I'm also a prosecutor, so I can say, the law says you have to wait till you're 13. You also can't jaywalk.
So the question is there any risk to helping someone who's in an overdose situation for getting some adverse effects of fentanyl in the air?
So yes, so fentanyl can be on clothes, on a person's body. When you administer Narcan, say you have Narcan, you know, it's always best to just touch that and put it in their nose and use it. We all like to believe that we would have gloves for CPR, should that be needed or whatnot. Just use your best judgment. Always look to see, but with fentanyl, you're not necessarily going to see it.
Good question. All right, how specifically, this is a great question, how specifically can we best support your efforts? Are there any volunteer opportunities?
I think just in general bringing in awareness to the community starts with conversations like this. You know, talk to your family members, talk to your friends. The more we can spread the message that fentanyl is dangerous, I think the better. I don't know of any specific, you know, opportunities here in Placer County to kind of volunteer around this, but I'm sure that they exist. But I think just spreading the message about it is the way to go. I personally don't think there is too young an age to start talking to kids about this. I'm a mother to 4 children. My oldest is 23, and my conversations with her are, you need to have Narcan in your car, in your backpack. She's well aware. I can have full-on conversations with her, and she's well aware of the risks. For my 9-year-old, I mean, she can give this wheel because she's heard it enough that fentanyl is dangerous. You only take a pill that it's given to you by your doctor or your mom or your dad. And that Narcan reverses overdose, and yes, she does know how to use it at 9 years old. My littlest one, basically, it's very simple. Drugs are bad. You know, don't take any pill unless it comes from mom or dad. I mean, I think that you really got to kind of look at the age you're talking to, and you know, make it in an age-appropriate way. But I really don't think that those conversations can start early enough.
Any other thoughts on how they can help you guys?
I think that, you know, Tim, you putting on this event is amazing. And just you guys being here and attending, sharing what you learned here today, and following him and seeing the next time he has another fentanyl awareness night, sharing that with your friends and your family members and asking them to show up too. Or anybody that you know that may have someone at home struggling with drug abuse or, you know, and volunteering. If you see something out in the community where you think someone's having a medical emergency, call 911. All of the first responders are carrying fentanyl right now. And that call that you made, or I'm sorry, Narcan. What did I say? Oh no, we're not carrying fentanyl. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to get you guys to laugh tonight, but yeah, no, we all carry Narcan. So if someone is having an emergency and you see it and you don't yourself have Narcan, calling 911 is the best chance that they're going to be able to be saved. Okay.
There's a stigma always when you're talking about, I see a hand back there. There's a stigma to overcome too, to talking about drugs or addiction or mental illness, suicide awareness, helping break that stigma. The VA has a program called Be the One, where you just call somebody, be that one person. And the fact that you're here and can now be that one, oh, I know that resource. I can send you there. Have you looked here? There's a card back there that has several emergency mental health resources listed on it. Just be a resource. I think that's the main thing we can do and break that stigma. We had a hand right here. Is Narcan heat sensitive?
So yeah, it's not supposed to be stored at elevated temperatures for a long period of time, so I believe it's around 120 degrees. So like in the car in the summertime, it'll start to degrade in your glove box. You're going to want to keep it in something that you can bring in at night. It's probably fine in a car in, spring, winter, and fall, but it definitely does degrade. It also expires after 2 years, so there's always an expiration date on the bottom of it. It'll start to lose its potency after that expiration date, so it's good to leave it away.
Can you travel with it?
I'm not sure. That's a very good question, and I haven't heard that one before.
It's less than 3 ounces.
It's less than 3 ounces.
I travel a lot for awareness events, and I know the presenters that I've worked with have probably with no problem.
The answer is probably yes.
And I was just going to suggest another idea for when somebody mentioned about volunteering. If you are connected to an organization, whether it's Rotary or a Scout Troop or a community of people, can always reach out, to Lisa, to Christina, and say, I'd like to bring you guys to my whatever to do this, so that's another idea. Like we're going to be going to Zach's Scout Troop. Scout leaders have reached out. That'll be our return trip to the Scout Troop. So that was how they wanted to help support it, was to bring the message to a Scout Troop.
What is the most frustrating part of your job? This is being recorded, so be very careful.
So not my boss.
I mean, I'll take a shot, and that is the recovery, long-term recovery. It's a game of odds. It's long odds. And I know probation deals with it. I know the gathering in deals with it. It's frustrating when we lose somebody. And you have to keep focused on the ones that we do save. So no matter how many people or how few people are here tonight, if we help one person, that's how I reframe that. It is frustrating to see someone you work with fall back out, or for watching probation have to violate somebody and take them back in, or watching someone get exited from a shelter, for example. It's frustrating. It's an uphill battle. There's a risk of compassion fatigue and burnout, and that's what the chaplains are here for. That's what we work with our first responders with. They're taking the same person in and out, having them be thrown back on the street, picking them up again, and another call for service, for example. It can be frustrating, but the ones that you help and the ones that get it together and to see them grow, that's what I live for. What about you guys?
I think one of the most frustrating things as a probation officer working with juveniles is that they have this mentality that it's not going to happen to them. Not me. Just on Friday, I was at an event. It was called The Bright Choice, where it's role played by a youth who overdoses with fentanyl. And when that scene happened where the youth overdosed, one of the officers who was making the presentation asked the youth, all the youth in the tent, there was probably about 30 of them, how many of you know someone who has died of fentanyl overdose? And approximately 3 to 4 youth raised their hands. And he said to that group, now look to your right, look to your left, because by the time you finish high school, every hand will be raised in this tent. And so that was a very powerful statement that I heard him say, because our youth don't think that it's going to happen to them.
Anybody else?
We have a question.
Oh, and pardon me, I can't even see you. The lights are in my eyes.
At the low barrier shelters or at the high barrier shelters, you need to have someone else return to like if that person then is on the street.
So that would be at the high barrier shelters, so the congregate care or the nomadic model. Unfortunately, if they do test positive, we would have to request them to be tested because they made a choice to break their agreement. We would follow up with trying to connect them to services always, but unfortunately, yes.
Okay, my next question is, how long must they access someone? What's the duration of time before they can be?
So it is by having violations of that rule they have violated. So the first time will be 5 days, 10 days, and then I believe 30, but it's case by case. So anybody struggling with addiction, we're trying to get them connected. So if we can get them to outpatient, inpatient, get them connected to agents, it's one of the biggest ones that we are also seeing, along with alcohol addiction. So we will connect them and make, we don't want somebody that is trying to get help because we all know that relapse is part of recovery. So if somebody unfortunately is relapsed, if we can connect them to services, we will allow them back into service.
Thank you. Are there wellness centers on high school or university campuses?
Yes. I can speak for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are wellness centers on a majority of the campuses. And a lot of the youth that I have interacted with, they meet with their counselors regularly. They're checking in with the wellness center and the wellness center is checking with them.
Then I have a question that might be appropriate for Christina, but how does CBD affect sleep? Is it addictive? Is it sold on the street?
You guys hear me?
Can you answer that?
I don't know if I can. My research, I usually focus on THC because that's the psychoactive compound that's really detrimental to our youth. However, the CBD still has the lasting effect because it's still that valuable. What was that first?
Is it addictive? Is it sold on the street?
Because it's not psychoactive and it's working in the body. I'm not really sure about that. Because THC is a component that responds to the dopamine system. And actually, CBD, in the way marijuana was in nature, went from 1% THC, we would have equal parts of CBD, and that was counteract psychoactive component. But as they bred for higher potency of THC, CBD went down. And so it's part of those who can't have CBD. I'm not sure about that. So, yeah, that's a really good question, by the way. My research is too much to focus on the one that we mentioned. But really good question.
Yep. So the answer is we don't know.
I don't know. But or not figure it out. Still learn. But I can find out if there is other research about the control of sleep.
Any last questions? We've got one more right here.
They sell a lot of things that, they also sell a lot of things in the store that might just become very, make the communication of the ridiculous. There's a lot of things out there that they're selling right now that are really scary too. And as far as CBD goes, there's a lot of new research being done, thank goodness. Now we're going to have more research out there. And I think it's important to follow the research and also vet where research is. And so that's something I know Canada's been really good at that. They know somebody cancer treatment, and he volunteered himself to be part of a new study on cancer, anxiety related during the cancer treatment with THC versus CBD versus placebo. And so they're actually doing this research right now. So, yeah, good question. There's a lot of stuff out there that they say it's good. I don't know. I couldn't make that. Thank you.
All right.
You know where I'll be tomorrow.
We have one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Do they have classes for in elementary school? These kids are smart. If they hear a program like this, they can get it like that.
So the comment or the question is, how young are we educating our children on this issue? Did I hear 6th grade in my last?
We do our assemblies down to middle school, so depending, middle school, some are 6th grade and some are 7th grade, depending on the districts. So that's as young that we're doing our assemblies at, and that's what most districts are comfortable teaching at. Just like everything else, there's always a balance with districts and parents about awareness versus teaching them. You know, it's like, oh no, you just taught my kid how to go get high. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. So there's always a balance. So middle school is about as young as we've been able to do, but we do parent information nights at the elementary school level. So at least we're teaching the parents to go talk to their elementary school kids to make sure they're giving the awareness, because we want to make sure parents are aware of these fake counterfeit pills so that they're at least doing prescription pill education with their kids. Just like you heard, your children are never too young to teach you don't take medication that's not prescribed to you, right? Because a concern I do have is a young child finding a fake pill in the park and being like, oh, it looks like candy, and maybe taking it and putting it in their mouth thinking it's a piece of candy, or just not knowing what it is, because we all know little kids put things in their mouth all the time. So children are never too young to be taught you don't put things in your mouth. If it's a pill that's not yours, you don't take it. So even if we're not going into the schools at that young age, we want to make sure we're educating the parents so that they're talking to their kids, because at least the parents are doing that education piece. If they're afraid of us doing it for them, we want to make sure the parents are doing that.
It sounds like, you know, it's getting better and better than I thought. But I mean, it's another thing. We can put people in a prospect if they're living, maybe two or three that are in the second grade. Let's put them in the middle grade, right? They're really good. I mean, it doesn't have to be a prosecuting attorney or someone, you know, work with it to get professional. It could be even parents.
Absolutely. Well, we're kind of hoping that as fentanyl becomes more aware, that it'll work its way into more of the regular say no to drug curriculums. You know, for example, even the high schools, all the high school health classes all have substance use disorder chapters, where all the 9th graders learn about substances and not using drugs. But there's no chapter on fentanyl, because when those books were written, the fentanyl crisis didn't exist. So the kids learn about the dangers of methamphetamine and cocaine and heroin, but they don't learn about fentanyl because it didn't exist when those books were written. So we need to get those curriculums updated. And so I know that's one of the things that Song for Charlie has been working with the state of California, is to try and get those updated. So that's one of the things we want to keep working on at a local level, but also on a state level, is trying to get those things updated and by pushing out material. So that's one of the things that is a plan for me and with my investigative assistant this summer, is working on materials that we can push out to our schools, that the schools can then push into the classrooms, that make it easy for the teachers to educate the students. That even if we can't be in the classroom, it makes it easy for the teachers, because we know our teachers are overworked, right? And they don't have time to put together new curriculums. So we want to put together a series of short videos, worksheets, really easy to digest materials for all the different age levels that the teachers can put on. Maybe it's like in homeroom, maybe it's, oh, we've got a 5-minute rain break, here's a quick video on the dangers of fentanyl, on different materials that the teachers can share whenever they have time. But we're hoping to be able to push those out to all the different grade levels, or at least elementary, middle, and high school, so the teachers can share that to try and get an extra level of education material out there, at least at our local level. So that's on my relatively short-term, next 6-month plan to try and get that out before October, which is when the next Red Ribbon Week hits. What our schools usually do, Crazy Hair Week for Red Ribbon Week, but I'd like to be able to have that toolbox out for our schools so they have additional education information out. But we'll be doing another set of assemblies before then.
All right, thank you very much. I got to respect everyone's time. Thank you to my panel. Thank you for the ladies allowing me to be up here with you. Is this girl power or what? Thank you to Laura. Thank you to Christina. They'll be around for a few minutes for questions. Get out there and be the light and carry the message. Would you please? Be blessed and have a great evening. Thank you.
I also want to say that we do have Narcan over there on the table for anybody that wants it. Please come and get some.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.